Yes, I can.
I don't have a graphic on this laptop. It's the poster.
Andy, did you tell these guys you're gonna mention Elante Brown as part of the discussion in Super 25 and not
Yeah.
as a separate standalone? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Simeon did make a pretty big
So yeah,
job.
Beth, do you want to go there? The Oswego, Plainfield South? If you think that's the one you need to go to for the rankings, go to that one. Don't worry about,
There's going to be a report as well.
because we're going to get one of these, I think, from the Daily Herald
Who will
too.
we get from the Daily Herald?
I haven't heard yet, but it's possible either
Hey, smile.
Wheaton South or
Smile.
definitely not Oswego.
You're getting good at this, Michael.
Yeah.
For
Definitely.
me, I feel like I'm between Brother Rice, Providence, or Oswego East, Plainfield South.
So I'll just go to the Batavia game and you can choose.
Going to one of the two.
Yeah, I just need to let Alan know.
Hey everyone, welcome into our week 5, Sun-Times game week. We've got a lot of exciting stuff. We got to go back, talk about week 4. We have some breaking news, obviously basketball information, but first we want to thank our content partner ABC7 who's live streaming our broadcast right now as well. I'm Annie Costable, this is Michael O'Brien, Beth Long, and we are coming to you live from the Chicago Sun-Times studio. So without further ado, again, let's get right into some of that basketball news.
It's Tuesdays, we had another commitment, Marquise Kennedy from Brother Rice, who I know even a lot of you guys that follow it pretty closely he's not a big name. He had a good year last year, but he's not a huge name. He started at Crete-Monee, transferred to Brother Rice, and he's just an excellent scorer, blew up really big this summer, had a Florida State and a Wichita State offer, but he chose Loyola today. And it's kind of the first real sign we've had that Loyola's run to the Final Four is going to translate to recruiting success. You know, they picked up, Tom Welch and some other good players, but this is a kid that chose Loyola over a much bigger school from a bigger conference that's more established. So it's a real win for Loyola. And Kennedy's the type of kid that, we don't have, the senior class isn't loaded. He's going to have a high profile this year. This is going to raise it a little bit more. And the way he can put points up, he's going to be a big star this year. This is going to add kind of a nice storyline to the season, having a kid like that going to Loyola.
Before we switch gears and you talk about the next topic, what actually is this going to do for Loyola's recruitment in terms of getting the top talent from the Chicagoland area?
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing you have to do is, lock up your home. And I guess the other big point with that we should mention is he's the 3rd player from the Illinois Wolves club program that has gone to Loyola. And there's been a lot of talk about the Mac Irvin Fire Club program kind of having a pipeline to Illinois and now maybe Chicago State after they hired Lance Irvin. But there's definitely a pipeline from the Illinois Wolves to Loyola. We've seen that now. This is the 3rd kid in a row. So that's very big now that that's been established.
And our next topic, obviously still on the basketball train.
News we broke on the website, the Chicago Elite Classic, always one of the biggest events of the whole year in prep sports. The lineup was announced, and kind of maybe the big news was the game's leaving UIC. No more pavilion. It's going to be at Wintrust Arena. So we're actually going to watch some public league teams play at Wintrust Arena, which is kind of a shock. It's Friday, November 30th and Saturday, December 1st. Friday starts out with a girls' game, Young against Montverde, and then 2 games with Catholic schools, St. Rita against St. Ignatius. And then the big matchup everybody likes on Friday night, Fenwick versus Oak Park. There's always a big crowd for that, those schools.
Yeah, definitely. They have huge student sections.
And they don't like one another.
No, not at all. They're not friendly.
There's usually some kind of trouble that the student section has gotten in. That one's fun. It should be good on the court this year, maybe a little down from the last 2 years, but there's enough going on in the stands that's fun. And then Saturday, oh boy,
Saturday we
one,
have
two,
some
three.
exciting games.
There's 8 games. That's just kind of a horrible idea to try to put 8 games in one day.
But they're exciting games.
I don't know how anybody's going to get through it all, but we're
I
going to
think
try.
they'll be just fine.
Yeah,
We've got
it is,
some exciting teams playing.
Bloom, West Aurora. Bloom's going to be one of the best teams in the area. Bloomington against St. Louis Chaminade, which should be a really fun matchup. Then Uplift and Evanston, which for locals might be the best game of the day. Both of those teams are going to be definitely top 20, maybe top 10. And then Huntington Prep, who Annie knows a little bit about, against Sunrise Christian. You want to tell us about Huntington Prep?
So I just came back from Mississippi, and Sunrise Christian Academy and Huntington Prep both have kids from the Jackson metro area. Jamin Brakefield, he's a top player in the 2020 class. He's not committed yet, but he has offers from schools like just pretty much every school, every top program in the country has offered Jamin Brakefield. So he's definitely going to be a kid you want to watch during that game. And then also Austin Crowley, who just transferred this past season to Sunrise Christian Academy. I don't know yet how much he's going to play, but he was one of our top 12 players in Mississippi. He was a Dandy Dozen, so he's definitely a top talented kid. But it just is a matter of whether or not he'll get on be in the starting 5 rotation. We'll have
because
to
Sunrise, they're one of those prep schools. They're loaded. They have one local kid that started at Mattea Valley, Malik Hall. He left after his sophomore year and reclassified. And then we've got the 4 public league powers, all against out-of-state schools. Starts out with Morgan Park against Vashon. everybody who was at the Elite Classic last year saw Vashon and Mario McKinney. He was just fabulous. I
Yeah.
rarely get all that excited about players I don't normally cover, but he was amazing.
This is true.
Yeah, so
This
that's
is very true.
So that's going to be Adam Miller against Mario McKinney. That's just going to be a fabulous guard matchup. And then Bogan against Dominican out of Wisconsin. It's going to be interesting to see Bogan on the big stage. They've been a good team for a decade now, but they don't usually get these invites to the big college arenas. So that's going to be a lot of fun to see. Then the big one, Simeon against St. Vincent St. Mary. That
Big
is
matchup.
Derrick Rose and Jabari Parker's high school against LeBron James's high school. So you can't get much bigger than that. That should be a lot of fun. And then Young against Mater Day. Mater Day, we've seen it a lot
million
at
times
this
at this, yeah.
event. You know, they're always very loaded. And that's going to be a nice test to see how we stack up against the rest of the country, because Young is most likely going to be our #1 team. And we'll see if they can hang with Mater Day. I really have no clue.
Coach Smith and Coach Slaughter from Whitney Young and from Simeon have been putting this together for how many years now?
That's a good question. At least 5,
Yeah.
maybe more.
And
Yeah.
I
At least.
remember just a few years ago talking to Coach Smith about why they wanted to bring a tournament like this to Chicago, and it obviously was just to showcase Chicago's top talent against talent across the country, and you're going to see that, like you said, specifically in those games on Saturday. Simeon versus St. Vincent St. Mary is obviously going
And
to be
we'll probably
huge.
have multiple mayoral candidates there too, now that the election's going
Usually
on.
it's just Rom. Usually
Yeah,
Rom
they'll
shows
all
up.
be
Yeah.
there. It'll be
It
like,
would not be basketball without a secret mayoral race
yeah, this whole
in the
basketball
gym.
season is going to be nothing but Friday night and mayoral candidates, and it's going to get
Hands will
annoying.
be shaking hands throughout the entire
Kissing babies.
The whole thing.
We're into it.
The whole
All right,
thing.
football. We ready for
Let's get into some
yes.
football. Beth, we'd like you to break down the new Super 25. A lot of movement, a lot of, I guess you could say there were a couple upsets. They didn't really look like upsets from the scores, but why don't you break down for us what's going on in the Super 25? Who's in, who's out, who moved where?
Yeah, I can tell you, we're going to be talking about Evanston a lot this year between basketball and in football. They were the highest debut in the Super 25 at number 10, but I will take you from 25 down. Number 25, Bolingbrook, with a loss that wasn't quite as bad as it looked on paper to HF. Number 24, Hinsdale Central. Number 23, Prairie Ridge. Whoever thought that they might be third place in the Fox Valley Conference? That blows my mind, but right now that's kind of where you're sitting, Prairie Ridge. 22, Stevenson, one of our first new faces. 21, Huntley. 20, Wheaton Warrenville South, another new face. 19, Phillips, still hanging in there. 18, Loyola, still hanging in there. 17, Willowbrook. 16, Montini. 15, Cary Grove, a third new team in the Super 25. 14, Marist. 13, Richards. 12, Barrington. So they drop after losing to Evanston. 11, Mount Carmel. 10, Evanston, like I mentioned at the very beginning here. 9, Glenbard West, holding steady at that 9th position. 8, Maine South, also holding steady at that 8th position. A pretty big jump here. Brother Rice, number 7, up from number 14. Another quality win under their belt this week.
Definitely
A
a
really
quality,
quality
yeah.
win, 35-3 over Loyola. 6, Simeon, another big jump. Another quality win for them this week too. 5, the top 5 stayed pretty steady here. 5 is Oswego, 4 is Homewood Flossmoor, 3 is Nazareth, 2 is Batavia, and number 1, still Lincoln Way East.
Let's talk about Evanston a little bit. Someone brought them up last week on our live stream, which leads me to say this. Please submit your questions. If you have anything you are wondering about, we'll answer it throughout the show. But someone did bring up Evanston last week and asked why they weren't in the Super 25 yet. Now they're in, and they're up there. So what was it that you were looking for before the season started, from that team? What led you not to put them in there, and what are you seeing now that is deserving of them being in there?
Evanston has had some pretty big recruits over the last few years, and they haven't actually put together really great seasons. Super 25 is not about the top recruits, as much as some people want it to be. It's about the strongest teams, and up until this point, I just wasn't convinced that Evanston was one of the top 25 teams. I am, however, convinced that Barrington is in the conversation, and they handily beat Barrington, so hence the pretty big jump into the Super 25. What I was waiting on is just a quality win. So this is the point of the season where we know some about some teams because we know their quarterback is back from last year, their whole defensive line is back, offensive line, whatever it is. And there are other teams that we don't know much about. And Evanston was one of those teams that has a lot of the key players. They have some solid athletes on the team, and just how well would they stack up against others in their conference and others in the Super 25, it turns out pretty well. So they debut at number 10.
Do you think, I shouldn't cause trouble here, but Evanston loves it when I doubt them. What do you think the chances are that Evanston and Barrington are in the Super 25 at the end of the season?
Good question.
I think pretty good. I mean,
you don't think that maybe just because Barrington happened to beat Maine South in that fluky game, they deserve the ranking?
I have seen Maine South live this year, and even if it was a fluke, Barrington's got to be pretty good to beat that team. That is not a team that would lay down and die. It's a similar conversation with Loyola, right? So by beating Loyola, Brother Rice, and I believe one of you guys saw Loyola the first week of the year, right? Or second week?
Second. I saw them the second.
And we were impressed, right?
No, they looked good against New Trier, people said. I wasn't there. But that's the only win they have locally.
Oh, I mean, I don't doubt that. And to me, a win over Loyola for like a Brother Rice actually just pads how good I think Brother Rice is, rather than how bad Loyola is. And until someone that just like really, really, really doesn't deserve to win against Loyola beats them, they'll probably hang in the Super 25, which we were just discussing before we went on the air. I think it's been at least the 4 years that I've been doing the rankings that Loyola has been in it every single week. And one more loss and
they haven't been 2-2
go.
since 1993.
That's crazy. I mean, Coach Holsack said at the beginning of the season that, you know, they weren't going to be the Loyola of the past, and we all kind of joked about that in week one of, you know, that's just his mentality all the time. But seeing them against Brother Rice, it was pretty shocking. I mean, Loyola, that is not a Loyola team I've ever been used to cover.
They just haven't been good the last 2 weeks. I mean, they've played good teams, but they've been destroyed by them. I mean, neither game was at any point close. Neither game that at any point it seemed like Loyola had a chance to win, which is really weird.
Those are probably words that like we've never said.
Yeah, but I would bet that Barrington and Evanston will both be gone by November.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. There's your challenge, Barrington and Evanston.
Let's talk a little bit about that Brother Rice Loyola game. Loyola made some uncharacteristic mistakes, I would say. 4
interceptions.
That was pretty shocking to see.
Yeah, it's just Loyola right now is in a lot of trouble. They can't run the ball, and so that leads their quarterback Matthew Schultz to have to make some tough decisions just to try to get something happening, and Brother Rice was able to take advantage of that. The big takeaway for me for Brother Rice was I feel like, you know, we saw Peyton Thorne. I saw him, the Western Michigan recruit that's at Naperville Central. He's a great quarterback. But other than that, I haven't seen a lot of just good high school quarterbacks this year. You know, really capable guys that control the team and can change a game. Well, that changed this weekend. John Bean from Brother Rice, he is a dynamite high school player. He's the type of kid that always makes the right decision, always gets at least a yard, even on a blown play. He was really, really impressive, and he's the type of guy I think that can take you pretty far. Dylan Summers, a kid who committed just yesterday, I think is a good wide receiver, and the defense, you know, Brother Rice proved that. So I'm interested in what Brother Rice's ceiling is, just how good they could be. I'm not really sure, but with a player like John Bean, who just always makes the right choice, they're going to be in good hands.
What is the biggest difference from last year to this season? Because the fact that they only won 2 games last year and are now undefeated and have solid wins, they beat Marist, they beat Loyola now, like that, what changed in just a year?
I think part of it is just some of these kids are more experienced, and also the biggest question for me with teams like Brother Rice and Wheaton Warrenville South, 2 particularly that were 2-7 last year and are now 4-0 this year, which was wild to say, is just, yes, you're winning, and like you have to know how to win. So there'll be a point where it kind of becomes a choice rather than just by chance we showed up and won. And when they head into the playoffs, like they have to learn how to win and expect to win. They're not the underdogs anymore. Like these teams are now in the Super 25. Teams are going to be coming for them. There's a target on their back, as I know everyone likes to say, and sometimes that makes you play differently.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the Catholic Blues is just tough. You can be a good team and just kind of fall in a hole and get a bad record. We've seen that happen with Mount Carmel a little bit.
Loyola
in
this
some
year.
Of the years, Loyola this year. Because Brother Rice, I saw week 1 last year. They played Marist really tough. You know, that was not a bad team that week. The season just kind of went off the rails, I think, for them.
We do have a comment about Simeon. We always talk about their offense. I didn't know that we always talked about their offense, but what do we think about their defense? This person, Terrence Parker, says they're nasty.
They look pretty good against Phillips, that's
Yeah,
for sure.
definitely.
Yeah, they didn't. And, I mean, this season overall, they're not allowing many points at all. They have perspectives this week coming up, Simeon, so that'll be an interesting test. They're not a traditional power, but they do have some good athletes. I believe they have a kid who's getting recruited by the Power 5 conferences as well.
I stopped by Simeon late last week, and they just are a program. I mean, from talking to Coach, he said that they've had more talented teams, but this team is more of a unit, and he said that's what's making the biggest difference. I mean, you could see it in their practice, you could see it on the field. They really are an entire team unit, and I think that truly does make a huge difference. So
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Simeon is always one of the most talented teams in the area, and when they work together as a team, like you just said, that's when they win. They can have a team full of Power 5 conference recruits, and if they don't work together and work as one, they won't win. And this year it seems like finally, honestly, for the first time in the last 4 or 5 years, they're doing just that, which is why you saw a pretty big jump up to number 6 for Simeon, who we did have ranked at the beginning of the year.
You were at the, I don't know if you've seen, but at Bolingbrook, apparently things are hot over there after that HF game. John Ivlo, the coach, is tweeting today talking about his critics and how anyone who thinks that we lost that game on purpose is wrong and all this stuff. So Bolingbrook's not handling their blanking at the hands of HF very well. How bad was it?
It was not that bad. As I said when I told you Bolingbrook was still in the Super 25, there was not a doubt in my mind that they were going to stay in the Super 25 after watching the game because they lost 29-0. Sure, there were 2 late scores by Leon Tana, so that's 14 points. This game was by all means very close for most of the game, and Bolingbrook got tired. Their defense was a little more sluggish, which is when HF was able to kind of just drive the hammer home. But they did not there was no semblance of me thinking losing on purpose or blowing the game. Bolingbrook is a good team. So if you think that they aren't good, you're in for a rude awakening, especially if you play them next week. They're solid. They have some young talent. Their defensive and offensive line are really impressive. So I don't even know where that would have come from, to be honest with you.
You don't see coaches tweeting about
especially not
games
Ivlo
very often. It was really weird.
Sorry,
So I
John.
noticed it, yeah.
That's not the impression that I left with, so I don't know where that came from.
we have just over 10 minutes left, so if you have any questions, make sure you're submitting them on our Facebook Live, talking about that home of Flossmoor game. Talk about their defense, because we've been talking about that all season long so far, is that is what is really setting them apart. So seeing them in that game, what was most impressive for you?
Coach Buzz said after the game, he was like, I think with this team, that 3 points might be enough to win. And I do not doubt that actually would be enough to win.
They've only given up 14 points the entire season.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And their defense, so one of the things that I thought was most interesting is what I know about Coach Buzz is that he really likes to have his hands in everything. So he likes to know what the defensive game plan is. He's more of an offensive guy for sure, but he likes to be involved in the defensive game planning. And this year with his defensive staff, he is literally just hands off and hey, you guys know best. I trust you. He said he didn't even ask his defensive coordinator what the game plan was until at 4 p.m. on Friday as they were loading on the bus. He asked him what the game plan was, and he told him, and he was like, that's gonna work. And it sure did. So I think part of it is just let the defensive-minded guys play a little bit. They have the athletes. They have a solid defensive line who's returned, and truly the difference with HF this year is just it starts from the defensive line, and then it goes back to a talented group of linebackers and then a talented secondary. But the less mistakes that you make with an experienced defensive line means there's less mistakes that could be possibly made further back in the field. So
Absolutely. Quick note too, we have a new Instagram account up, CST Game Week. Submit your photos, pictures, videos throughout the week, especially on Fridays, Saturdays. Well, Thursdays too. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, game day. We want your pictures and we'll post them on our Instagram. Let's get into some other games that we want to talk about.
Oswego Joliet West. I was out in Joliet in the sweltering, hellish heat for 4 hours watching this one. It was good for about a half. Joliet West was able to keep it close, and then Oswego just came out and went nuts. I saw my second good high school quarterback of the week and kind of the season, Noah Parker, 13 of 16 in the game, 324 yards. He was excellent. His connection with Jamal Fomby, a receiver we've heard about, was really good. And then Charles Coleman, the running back we've talked about a bit. You know, he didn't break anything big, but he was consistent. What was kind of surprising to me was how good he was as a receiver. He had really soft hands, made 3 really nice catches, and I think maybe he might be a tight end in college, some people have talked about. He did leave the game late hobbling a little bit. So that's something to keep an eye on. I'm not sure what his status is, but I think Oswego, they deserve the ranking based on their wins. They looked it on the field too. You know, that's a really capable team. As far as Joliet West, they have a new coach, Bill Leck, and that's a program that just has never been good, you know, frankly. And it was nice to see them be so fundamentally sound. They didn't have a bunch of penalties. You know, the defense held strong. It took big plays for Oswego to beat them. So that's a good sign for a new coach at a program that should probably be better than it is based on the amount of kids they have and the athletes.
When you think about the top 5 too, like Oswego is number 5 with Oswego, Homewood Flossmoor, Nazareth, Batavia, and Lincoln Way East. I don't think there's any doubt, at least in my mind, that those 5 are right now the top teams in the area, and that could change based on injuries, based on weather, based on schedule, whatever it is. But right now, I think that truly those 5, even though we're not talking about them a ton, are the ones to keep an eye on.
Yeah, because they've been winning by so much.
Yeah.
This was, to me, the most surprising score of the weekend was the Lake Forest 24, Lake Zurich 7. Lake Forest football is not something we've talked a ton about since good old Tommy Reese.
Which was Tommy Reese.
Quite a while ago now.
Nice.
But yeah, Lake Zurich, you know, they were highly touted. They've been good for
Right.
so long. They're only averaging 12.5 points a game. They had a ton of turnovers in this one, fumbles and interceptions. And Lake Forest, big play, Ryan C.K. to Breck Nowick for 72 yards to win it. And now you look back, Lake Forest, their losses were to Antioch and Wheaton North, who we'll mention Antioch a little bit quickly here in a bit, but you know, something's happening there, that's nice. And then Evanston beat Barrington 32-13. Ben Tarpey is the quarterback at Evanston to watch that I am doubting, but 268 yards for him, he's looking pretty good. We got the preview, but before we hit the preview, let's briefly hit a couple teams we haven't talked about at all. Antioch, 23 regular season wins in a row. I had no idea they won that many regular season games in a row until I looked it up. They're only allowing 10.5 points a game. You know, they're another one of those schools that's way up there past the Fox Valley, so we don't know a ton about them. And then Beth's favorite team, Cary Grove, who she mentioned a little bit.
They're in. You're in, Cary Grove.
They beat Huntley 35-20, and they look like they're in the driver's seat now of the Fox Valley Conference. Who they play this week?
They play
Dundee Crown, is it?
Dundee Crown.
Who put up a ton of points. Lost to Prairie Ridge, so that's probably going to be a lot of points. That is on Saturday.
70-55.
Yeah, that
was
was crazy. So that's on Saturday. I haven't decided where I'm going yet Saturday, but maybe I should go see Cary Grove.
I will just say I have been to Cary Grove. I covered Trevor Ruland, the meanest offensive lineman I've ever seen in my life, so I don't doubt you, Cary Grove. Okay, I don't doubt you. You're in.
She had to say it.
And they're ranked now, so they'll be happier.
You're ranked.
The other school we should mention that we've never talked about football-wise, I'm sure, is McNamara. It's Bishop McNamara in Kankakee. Nobody's cared much about them.
We had them ranked
at all.
2 years ago.
Oh, they did get it.
They did
All
get
right.
ranked because they are in our coverage area. You helped me find that out.
Yes, Kankakee is firmly in the Sun-Times coverage area, for sure. They were beating IC Prep. This is the game I was actually kind of keeping track of on Twitter on the sidelines of my game, because we all know how good IC Prep is. They've been really a dominant force for the last few years. And McNamara was winning the whole game. It looked like they were going to get this monster win. And then with 16 seconds left, IC Prep pulls off a 50-yard touchdown pass to get the win. But I think the AP voters will see that McNamara was that close to even a school bigger than them, and they should jump up a little bit in the AP poll. And that's a team we could be watching on Friday in Champaign.
Yeah, also of note, I did drop out IC, Naperville Central, and Lake Zurich out of the Super 25. Lake Zurich, you're still like right on the edge for me, but I just like need to see a little bit more. I have a chance against Stevenson on Friday, so that's one of the games that I have my eye on, not to like segue into the next section. When you look at like IC, I know that they had a big win against Joliet Catholic, and when there's 4-0 8A teams that are also having solid wins. There's
It's
just
hard,
not
yeah.
enough spots in the Super 25 for everybody. So
Right.
that's why they fell out. They're still solidly on my radar. They'll probably end up back in the Super 25 by the end of the year. And when you have a 4-0 Evanston who takes down Barrington, who we know is a quality team, they got to go in.
Yeah, that game was
Absolutely.
on the road too. I didn't mention that, but McNamara almost beat them in Elmhurst, which is
Yeah.
even harder. So
Okay, a couple games we have to preview. Batavia, Wheaton, Warrenville South. So Batavia is number 2. Wheaton, Warrenville South is number 20. That's going to be a big game.
Yeah, Wheaton Warrenville South is one of the state's legendary programs. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
they've fallen off in the last few years. We haven't been out there much, and it used to be all about their offense. They had one of those high-flying offenses that scored like 50 or 60 a game. They didn't care about
Corey Davis.
anything else. Yeah, that's Wheaton Warrenville South Joliet Catholic is one of the greatest games in the history of the state. Everybody talks about, but why is Wheaton Warrenville South good this year? It's different.
Tell us.
I mean, I feel like this is the common theme, right?
Yeah.
Defense. Is it Joe Ives? I believe it's Joe Ives that had 5 picks in the first 3 games. I mean, it really is so interesting this year seeing like Homewood Flossmoor, a team that traditionally puts up a ton of points. Their calling cards are defense. Same thing with Wheaton Warrenville South. I hate to come back to this, but the old saying, defense wins championships, I think actually really may be the theme this year in Illinois. I have a hard time seeing any of these teams that will make it through the end of the year in the top, 5 or 10 that aren't going to be riding their defense. So we'll see. I mean, Wheaton Warrenville South is in a good spot. Like their rest of their season looks pretty good. We were looking at it the rest of the week. They have St. Charles North, I believe, the last week of the year, but the rest of the games are games that they can win, especially looking at what they've done thus far. So
This
we'll
is
see.
huge. I mean, I think a lot of people aren't sure if Wheaton Warrenville South, is that great. This is a massive test. We'll find out an awful
Absolutely.
lot.
Maine South versus Evanston. I think that could be one of the most entertaining games. They're the closest ranked teams to each other, 10 and 8. What will this mean for Evanston if they're able to pull it off against Maine South?
A really confused Beth Long with her rankings, to be completely honest, because it's Maine South lost to, who did they lose to? I'm blanking on. No.
Barrington.
To Barrington, and then Evanston beat Barrington, and then we have like 3 of these like love triangles happening, and like who do you rank on top of the other one when everybody lost to one and beat the other one? I do think Evanston, I mean, we'll see. This could mean a lot for Evanston. This could also mean that Evanston is for real. I think they're for real. My money's on them. Like I put them at number 10, and I also think Maine South is for real. I've seen them live. If Maine South doesn't make a lot of mistakes, they'll probably come out on top. But we're going to learn a lot about Evanston in the process.
Yeah.
Is Bobby and Sarah back?
No, he's not. But Cole Dow played a lot better, it looks like, last week. So I think that's kind of the main reason Maine South struggled at all. And for some like kind of context, Maine South has dominated this conference. I mean, they have just been the big dogs for like 30 years.
Right.
They rarely lost a single game in the conference. Forget about winning it. That's changed a little bit the last couple of years. They've at least been challenged. But Evanston also, that's a big mental hurdle they're going to have. This is a program that's just dominated them for decades, so it's going to be tough to get a win. They are at home though, so that'll help a little bit. That'd be a fun one to go to. I haven't totally decided where I'm headed Friday, but Maine South Evanston would be neat.
Lincoln Way East versus Lincoln Way Central. What do we think about that game?
It's going to be a lot of Lincoln Way people there.
Oh,
There's
really?
Jokes with Michael
Yeah.
O'Brien.
I remember when they were just one high school, but now here they are. Yeah, I mean, Lincoln Way East, nobody's going to pick against them. I mean,
No.
Central is talented.
Yeah.
Central is talented. I'm not going to pick Central to win, but I do think that Central could make a case for it. They're definitely one that I would bet Lincoln Way East coaches are spending some time really getting
Even if it was
against.
close, that'd be exciting.
For
so Lincoln
sure.
Way East hasn't had really a close
You know
game.
what else would be exciting? AJ
AJ Henning comes back.
Oh, yeah, well, maybe for the, I wouldn't count
What
on
what is happening with that? Do we have any?
He's day to day, and he'll be back in a couple weeks.
Is this
what
the
we hear
NFL?
every time. Yeah, it's weird at
He's
this
day to
point.
day.
You have to be worried.
AJ,
about
come
that.
back.
Yeah, Beth. A game Beth was considering going to was Oswego East at Plainfield South.
Two 4-0 teams. By all means, on paper, both of you guys, Plainfield South and Oswego East, look really good. When I sometimes wish that the Super 25 was the Super 30 because you guys would be in the Super 30. Providence Catholic, Oswego East, Plainfield South are the 3 teams that I really have my eye on this week, and that I do think could absolutely make the case or pull upsets in to get into the Super 25, similar to how Cary Grove, Barrington, Wheaton Warrenville South did last week. I'm just really curious to see how these 2 teams match up. If one of them goes into this and blows the other one out, that's your case. Like, you deserve to be in the top 25 teams in the area, and one of those teams is going to be playoff eligible. That's something we haven't even talked about. Some of these teams that are 4-0, if they win next week, you're playoff eligible, and it's the middle of September.
And I can count that as Plainfield South is actually in Joliet. I don't know if anyone knows that, but its actual street address is in Joliet. So I can count that as a Joliet playoff team, possibly. Real quick, last minute here, I do want to mention a fun Saturday game, Raby at Westinghouse. Raby actually walks over to Westinghouse to play that game on Saturday afternoon. They call it the Janice Jackson Bowl. And she has been principal at both of the schools, and now she's head of all of CPS. She used to always come. I don't know if she will this year now that she's big and important, but we'll see. I might head over there to watch that one. It's going to be a good game. Raby's 3-1. They've beaten Curie and Lane, and people are raving about them. You know, we kind of forgot about them after that Niles North loss.
Did not forget.
People are raving about them, and then we don't know a ton about Westinghouse, but they beat Solorio and Morgan Park last 2 weeks, so that should be a fun game.
So a lot of great news going on this week. We hope we gave you all that